We're coming to you from Rythmia Life Advancement Center in Guanacaste, Costa Rica. And who are we? We're in a life advancement center that does something called a soul merger with the help of sacred plant medicine like ayahuasca and metaphysical teachings, breath work, food, a cleanse, to bring about in classes, to bring about this life change that is permanent. It is the start of all things. There's life before Rythmia and there's life after Rythmia. How do I know? Because I stay in contact with the 7,500 people who've been here. How do I do that? We do it through surveys and we find out what they're going through. So 97.55% of the people that say they had this soul merger, 6 months later still have it working in their life and report that this was the week that changed their life, their week at Rythmia. What's going on at Rythmia? We're renovating the whole project. So the rooms are beautiful. I'm going to show you one probably on the next maybe the next Facebook Live. I'm going to take and show you one. They're just gorgeous. Brand new swimming pool. The place is going to be ready to see people very shortly as soon as our government lets go here. Talking about some things. So with the aid of plant medicine, I made some predictions. When the experts were saying an 8 to 10% death rate, we were saying 0.2% in the United States. It's much, much closer to 0.2% than it is to 8%. Well, we had the use of plant medicine and they haven't, so that gives you that. Another thing, I also predicted that once this is called over, and when I say called over, I mean somebody says the risk is largely over, take off your mask, come out of your house and go about your way. We will experience a period not unlike the Roaring 20s of the 1920s of huge growth in all of these things. And I still believe it. And within the next 6 months, we'll be able to prove it. Next thing, I also called the end of the virus. Somewhere between mid-October and the end of November. They will call the end of the virus. What do I mean by that? I mean that the infection rate to death rate will be so insignificant that everybody, despite their political agenda, despite their core beliefs, despite everything, will say this is over. And that is what I'm looking at. And I swear to you, you follow this, it will be there. Sometime probably right after elections, which happens to just be crazy timing, but yes, right then. Now, a lot of times I talk about lessons from the medicine. What are these lessons from the medicine? Well, these lessons from the medicine are things that I've learned on my 270 some plant journeys. Now, one thing when you come to Rythmia, you must write down your journeys. I'm getting more out of my journeys than I am out of new journeys. Reading what happened in my previous journeys. So these are lessons from the journeys. The one that I want to talk about today is something that's actually going on in my life right now. I have a person in my life that I have a relationship with that I'm having what is perceived as trouble with. Now, and I have all kinds of evidence that it is this person and it's not me. There's all kinds of evidence. I have all kinds of support, all kinds of people coming to my aid, all kinds of things. But the truth of it is, the answer is not in that person. The answer is not in changing someone else. The answer is always in changing me. The answer is always in examining me. The answer is always in finding what is triggering me by this outside thing, or what is making me act in accord with this or vibrate with it in me. And this is the most beautiful part of the challenge. This is the most beautiful lesson in plant medicine, and this is the most beautiful lesson for us as a community. Why? I want to explain something to you. It is never outside. What do I mean by that? Big topic lately, systemic racism. Well, if 20% of the population is protesting in some way, shape, or form, then that racism is in that 20% as well. Sometimes in those who protest the loudest. So, what is the way to end the racism? What is the way to end inequality? What is the way to end overstepping of big business? What is the way to end? It's all 100% within us as a person. So, how do we get rid of it as a whole? I cannot get rid of it by yelling at my neighbor. Stop being a racist. I can't do it this way. You cannot say, hi, stop doing this. Hi, stop doing this. A big thing about taxes. Donald Trump just showed his taxes or something like this. I'm no Trumper, but I am a business guy and I know something. He wasn't trying to pay more taxes than the law allowed. And I doubt there's one person in the United States who's actually tried to do that. Think about this. So everybody's yelling at this, and this guy, I don't even have an opinion, and I wouldn't say it if I had it. But he's not, personality-wise, one of my favorite people. But I guarantee you, there is nobody else in the United States who sat down to do their taxes and said, well, you know, I could pay this 13%, but you know what? I'm going to go with 18%. Just doesn't happen. And so what I'm trying to show you here is that not one of us should talk about someone else unless we've done something better than them. So where does this all get to? It's a fact. The systemic racism is in all people if it's in anyone. How do we fix that? We don't fix it by yelling to not eat a tuna or this cup. That's not how you do it. You do it in yourself. If all 350 million people sat down and took this out of themselves, that problem's gone. Now the problem of inequality. A lot of the people fighting for equality are people that are harboring inequality. See, you can't do it this way. You can't shout it out of someone else. You can only fix it within you. You can only fix these things within you. And once you otherize it, it gets you off the hook. See, once I see someone doing something that I can talk about that they're doing wrong, it gets me off the hook. And all of a sudden, I have the ability not to look at myself, but to look at them, to point a finger. This is the whole thing. You will never, ever, you got to hear me. You got to visualize it. You got to come with me on this. You will never, ever, ever fix anything outside of you. If you do, it's temporary. You know why? Because if I get her to stop being racist, it's still in me. Do you see? The only way we can do it is we get together as a group and take it out of ourselves. The more that we take out of ourselves, all ships in the harbor rise. What does this have to do with what's in me? What does this talk today about social changes and all this? What does it have to do with what's in me? The same exact thing happens in our life. We can talk about it in forms of racial equality, but we can also talk about it in a relationship between a man and a woman, a man and a son, a woman and a daughter, a woman and a son. We can talk about it in this relationship, that the issue is never, ever, 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 ever outside of us. Ever. Now that's a hard pill to swallow. How do I know that? Because the medicine has shown me and I have tested it. It is never, ever, ever outside of me. The situation that I'm having with someone in my life right now, I will only resolve through work in me. It will never be resolved through work in them. And listen to this. I do this for a living. I look at these issues. I do this for a living. I teach people how to do it. And sometimes when I am asleep at the switch, I fall into the same trap. the same trap of looking outside of myself and changing him so that it affects me. Once you do that, you're done. And I did that yesterday. And I am so sorry that I did. Not sorry that I did, but I learned a great deal from it. In 24 hours, I've had a full lesson. And I just now am breathing and letting that in and looking at what part of that I own and then how to fix that part. So when I do that, I become more whole. Then I'll take and talk about what I talked about last week. The next part of that is once I see it in myself, I have to love it. This is where it gets super, super, super hard. You see, when you're on the medicine and you see, let's say racism was the thing, and I drink to racism and I ask the mother to show me in my life where I'm racist, and I see it. And I go, oh, I hate that. Okay, in that moment, I'm detesting that racism. But because I'm seeing it under the medicine, the container is love. So when I see that part of me in the medicine, I love it. Sounds crazy. I love my racism on the medicine because I have so much love for me because I'm a part of the mother. And then in that minute, the racism leaves. So this is the same thing in our lives, right? It has nothing to do with that other person. It has everything to do with us. And when we see it and we're appalled by it, if we detest it, it will never, ever, ever change. If we detest that thing, it will never, ever, ever change. So what does this look like? It looks like awareness, like self-examination. Forget about what this person's doing or that guy did to me or my aunt or I was abused. Forget it. Bring it into me. Seeing where that is that's bothering me in me. Then identifying it and then forcing to love it. Force yourself to love it. Because if you can't love it, it will never, ever, 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 ever change. Crazy, simple, and real. Yeah, so how do we do this in our lives? What does this mean for us as a society? Well, here's the thing. If you take a look at it, plant medicine, if you were to look at what's going on, plant medicine is coming out of the dark ages into the mainstream. Psychedelics are coming into the mainstream. Why? Because the self-awareing consciousness wants to be revealed. This thing that is not outside of us, but is in us, wants to be revealed. What wants to be revealed? Love. Love is the thing that's trying to be revealed through all things. Breathwork, yoga, if you notice since Yogananda, look at that 40 years ago and look at it now. Look at where yoga is. Look where breathwork is. Look where this awareness is. People are doing mindful stuff. And the cherry on that, in my opinion, is plant medicine. Why? Because it allows for the quickest change. I can see this part of me that I knew was there, that I was afraid to look at. Why was I afraid to look at it? Because I know I would detest it. I know that it would take away from the story that I tell myself and others, if it were mine. I drink the medicine, I'm allowed to see it, and I'm allowed to see it in a teacup full of love. I'm basking in a cup full of love. And when I see that, I do detest it for a moment, and then all of a sudden love takes over. And when love takes over, that thing goes away. I can promise you this. If alcohol, you believe, let's say you believe alcohol is your thing, and you never, ever, ever come to the thing before it, and you never, ever, ever love that thing, that you'll spend the rest of your life in AA, and nothing against AA, and you will be in a constant battle with that thing till the end. That's just an example. That's an alcohol example. The same thing can happen in relationships. The same thing can happen in business. What do you mean it can happen in business? I want to tell you the truth of what I mean it can happen in business. Those of you who have businesses that you're afraid to see the truth of that business will never, ever, ever, ever fix the part of that business that needs to be fixed. And what do I mean by that? Let's say this. Let's say I have people in my business who are hurting my business. And yet they're some woven into the fabric of the business. And so I will not let myself see how they're hurting it, or keep it in the back of my mind or whatever. I won't let them do it. And then once I do it and I love that person, let's say the person's been in my company 15 years, I can actually, when I love that person, I love the situation, I love the part of me that allowed them into the business, I can actually change that person's life and the business's life for the better. Until that happens, I can't do it. Until that happens, I can't do it. So what am I saying then to people that don't have access to plant medicine? There are ways to do it, and I'm going to give you a shortcut. So if you are good at self-examination, and this is the key, you've got to either meditate or get someplace quiet or walk in the woods and get this thing out that is the source of the issue of the problem that you're having with you. And you identify that. And this is what you have to do. Consciously identify it. So let's say it's selfishness. Let's say it's selfishness. And then I want you to go one deeper and see the root of that selfishness. Oh, the root of that selfishness was, I have 3 siblings, and every time my mother would put cookies on the table when we were 5, we'd fight over them, and I'd end up losing. And I got very jealous of them. Bingo. Now, take the thing that you love most in your life, whether that is your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your husband, your wife, usually children. And you get that picture of your son or daughter when they were at the height of your love. Let's say it's 4 years old. You have this picture of your daughter when she was 4. And now what I want you to do is catch the feeling tone of the daughter. And once you catch that feeling tone in here, I want you to turn your attention to you as a little boy over those cookies, or you as a little girl over those cookies, the situation there, and love that little one. And all of a sudden, in that love, this thing, this jealousy or this envy, magically changes. That's how to do it. That's how to do it if you don't have plant medicine. And if you can do that and do it consistently for just a little while, the nature of the thing itself changes. So not only do you have to love that little boy, you have to love the product of it. You see, because without that, it will never change. Without that, you will be a dry drunk. Without that, you will be somebody who runs the rest of your life carrying these things that are no longer even yours in an environment of love. So I want you to really catch this. Then, if you're like me, I always call myself Sammy Shortcut. My whole life, I looked for shortcuts. My whole life. What is the greatest shortcut that I know? Plant medicine. The most beautiful shortcut that I know. Plant medicine in the right environment, with the right aftercare, with the right classes, with the right intention, and at the right place, administered by the right people. It's something that is beyond all compare. When the thing is, when Rythmia was up and going, I used to look at this and say, oh my God, what a great thing, and da-da-da. But now that I have time and I'm sitting here, I'm not only reading my own journeys, I'm going back to letters people have written me about their experience here. And when I see the lives that were changed in this place, and I get a chance to sit in awe of how lucky I am to be able to participate after leading a very wretched life. I was a very bad guy, and God is so forgiving, God is so loving, and God is so wonderful that she actually gave me the opportunity to do this with the rest of my life. So what I'm going to tell you is redemption is real. And all of you people, and I brought this up last week, all the people that come here and do the medicine and finally have this thing happen and get right with themselves and are happy and like going through life, don't otherize it again. Don't start looking at your life and detesting the things that you don't like, because in that moment of you getting put it back together, your chemistry mimics the job you were designed to do. So in that moment, your chemistry mimics the job you were designed to do. What am I going to talk about? Why am I talking about this? Well, I did plant medicine for the first time in 2014, and since that time, I had been working on my feminine side. Working on my feminine side, wanting to become more feminine. So, the exact thing that the medicine showed me, I otherized. So what do I mean by that? What was beautiful about me was my masculine side. And masculine with love is divine masculinity. And only through loving my masculinity was my feminine side able to start coming up. I got to the point that I no longer cared about nurturing my feminine side. And in that moment, in the moment of self-acceptance of my masculine side, the feminine side started to shine through more. Crazy. And that's from a guy who's done a ton of plant medicine. So what I'm going to tell you, when people tell me, yeah, well, I had it, and because the 2.55% of people get it together and lose it later. That's 2.5 out of 100. Why do they lose it? Because they start looking at this gift that is them, that was created to be whole as them. And they start looking at pieces and saying, I got to go get that piece, instead of loving the void for that piece. Very, very tricky stuff, but very, very, very real. So, in closing today, I love you guys. I want you to take this and actually taste it and ingest it and feel these things, because they're 100% absolutely real. On a Rythmia side, I want to see you at Rythmia. Once they call the end to this virus, it will be so packed here that will be booked 6, 8, 12 months in advance. Please call now. Get a reservation. I don't care if it's for February, March, April, May, whenever you think you'll be able to get here, get here. This will change your life. And I want to tell you something. When you see, there is no such thing as like academic memory or corporate memory or institutional memory or even country memory. And as soon as this is over and things are back to normal, people will get lost again. Get here so that the next 10 years are the best 10 years of your life. Please come here. Please see us. Please work with us. May God bless you. May God keep you, and may God hold you. We look forward to seeing you at Rythmia.